checks on employees is changing. Moving from more traditional snapshots, employers can now receive ongoing real-time updates about things like protests an individual might participate in or encounters with law enforcement, even if it doesn't result in an arrest. This, according to a report posted online this week by The Intercept reporter. Ava Kaufman joins me now. So tell me, from a practical standpoint, an employer wants to know whether or not their employees are getting into trouble. How does a background check change that piece of information?
Yeah, so in a typical background check, an employer is only getting a one-time snapshot, as you pointed out. And so this has been something that's kind of occurred to a lot of different employees and employers and federal agencies, over the years, that you might be hiring someone and 5 years down the line they get into trouble, and you wouldn't ever have a chance of knowing that. So what the wrap-back system does is it provides real-time ongoing notifications so that if someone has contact with law enforcement and is in a sensitive key position of trust, as the FBI calls it, such as a nurse or someone who works with children or the elderly or disabled, their employer would actually get a notification saying, hey, this person has had contact with law enforcement since the background check happened, say 5 years ago.
So who owns that wrap-back database and how does information get into it?
So the wrap-back system is owned by, I guess, I don't know if owned would be the right word, but it's, maintained and operated by the FBI. But states, it's worth noting, also have their own wrap-back databases. And so those are coordinated through their, criminal database systems. And one of the kind of concerns with entering all of this information into the federal system is obviously, the FBI is doing background checks, for years. It's the gold standard for background checks. However, the FBI usually gets a fingerprint submission and then they expunge that data. They run the background check and they take that data away. With the wrap-back system, they're actually keeping those fingerprints on file because they need them in order to scan them for ongoing notifications. And the concern is that that data can now be used for all kinds of other purposes. It's entered this massive database, not just of civilian data submitted for background checks or data submitted from the DMV, but it's in this massive database called the Next Generation Identification Database that also searches all of these criminal submissions alongside it.
Okay, so if somebody is keeping my fingerprints on file for a long time, how can that be used against me later on?
Well, one of the concerns is that because all of these fingerprints are now being submitted, subject to kind of searches alongside, criminal fingerprints, the data that you've used for one purpose is all of a sudden subjecting you to what, civil liberties advocates call a perpetual police lineup. It's being searched when someone else's databases are being scanned in the system for a criminal purpose. And so one concern is false matches. But let's pretend that false matches are never a problem and the database works well. Another concern is that you start to get the representation of people that are more subject to encounters with law enforcement kind of grows in that system. So one concern is that African Americans are disproportionately impacted by policing and by over-policing of their communities. And the increased submissions of their fingerprints or their facial photos subject them to more and more searches.
And what about the accuracy of the information that's going in? What if I didn't do anything wrong, but I just happen to have my fingerprint in the system anyway?
Yeah, so accuracy has already been a major concern with background checks, and there have been a lot of movements, asking the FBI before it continues to, be the gold standard of background checks, to fix their records. So, the National Employment Labor Project has shown in 2013 that 50% of the information that the FBI has that it uses to run background checks doesn't actually include the final disposition of the case. So what that means is that so many people's records incorrectly indicate a link to a crime that A, they might have been not, accurately charged with, B, those charges might have been dropped, or C, that case might have been sealed.
And employers are for this, even though there's that caveat that you just mentioned, that technically the screen could come back that Hari's in this system, and that might already preclude me from getting a second look or my resume going on to the next round. Well, he's in the system. I don't know whether he's guilty or not, but he's in the system. Let's move on.
Yeah, it kind of seems like employers are split on background checks in a way, because we've seen a lot of movements and a lot of activism towards, kind of ban-the-box legislation across states and in the federal government. Obama and the Obama administration in 2015 decided that federal employees would no longer be asked about their criminal history. That's what, banning the box meant. And so a lot of people have decided that actually, you want to encounter the background check process later in the system. So while some employers might want, to have more sensitive information about their employees, to receive more ongoing updates, there has been a large push towards understanding background checks as unfair and discriminatory practices, especially in the early stages of hiring.
So how does this get fixed?